Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Friday, May 8th edition of the MMAOB Daily Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Adam Martin, and I'll be taking you guys through the latest in the world of mixed martial arts. Running solo today to talk about the news from the last few days with you guys, and of course, talk about UFC 249 a little bit here. Card takes place tomorrow. It's happening, guys. It's actually happening. Can't believe it. There's something in the back of my mind the whole week that was like, some politician or someone with influence is going to try to get this event canceled, but it's gone through with it. And all week we've been watching on social media as these fighters are being getting tested. The swab test looks really painful, by the way, shoving that Q-tip down way into your brain, basically. Really funny videos they'll post about guys like Gilbert Burns and Francis Ngannou, like some of the toughest dudes in the world, and they're like freaked out by this thing. But yeah, so far so good. I mean, we haven't had any positive tests that I've heard of, which is definitely a good thing. So, you got to give the UFC some credit. I mean, they're running an event at a time when it's a global pandemic basically right now. And so far, so good. So far, things are smooth sailing. But again, we'll see. I mean, some of these test results might have not come back yet, and who knows, right? But, crossing my fingers that everyone's safe and sound for this event, which, again, is supposed to take place tomorrow on ESPN Plus pay-per-view. So it should be a great card. On Tuesday, myself and Cole Sheldon broke down every fight in the card. All 12 fights, gave our picks for that. Go back and check out Tuesday's show if you want to hear my picks for the card. But I do want to talk about the card a little bit here before I get into some news, because the weigh-ins just were completed not too long ago. And it went mostly smoothly, which is a great thing. So on Tuesday, I predicted that one fighter would miss weight, potentially two, but I said one fighter for sure would miss weight. That's what happened here. Only one fighter, though, so that's a good thing. Jeremy Stephens came in at 150.5. So he missed weight by 4.5 pounds or 5.5 pounds, I guess, technically. But he's the only guy who missed weight. So that's pretty damn good. I mean, you got to give these fighters a lot of respect. They were not really given the same normal, sauna that they be accustomed to. And their fight week's been really screwed up. And obviously some of these guys have cut weight, twice now, like Tony Ferguson in the last few weeks. A lot of guys have been, peaking for a certain date, an event, and then they had to stop training and the weight cut got screwed up. So it's actually pretty amazing that only one guy actually missed weight. So you got to give these fighters a lot of credit here. But yeah, Jeremy Stephens missed weight. And honestly, I don't want to spoil it from Tuesday's show if you guys haven't seen it yet. But, that's one fight where I'm pretty confident Calvin Kattar wins, even, despite Stephens being a little bit heavier. I like the matchup for Kattar. So either way, go back and check out Tuesday's episode for my picks for that card. But yeah, I mean, nothing else changed really from Tuesday till today as far as the card goes. It seems like everyone's ready to go for tomorrow, so it should be awesome. It's just nice to have the sports back, man. It's really good. This pandemic's been going on for about 2 months now. Last UFC event was in the second week of March. That was the Kevin Lee and Charles Oliveira card. We haven't had anything since then. And really, we haven't had any other pro sports since then. It's been a few things here and there. I know there's like some Korean baseball league I think is playing right now, but I'm not really into that. For me personally, it's been kind of a little bit of a boring 2 months. I've been trying to keep it as busy as possible, but I miss sports, man, and I know you guys are the same way. So we have to watch some fights tomorrow, guys. It should be good. It's pretty sweet how the UFC and MMA is the first like real big sport back, compared to some of the other sports. But we'll see what happens. I mean, again, I just hope everyone stays safe and healthy, because if someone tests positive, you can see these other events potentially crumbling. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully everyone stays safe. Hopefully everyone stays healthy, and hopefully we get through this event with just flying colors, basically. So tomorrow night, guys. Tomorrow night tonight. All right, let me get some news now, because there's been a few pieces of news the last few days. So start with Jon Jones. Dana White spoke yesterday to the media, so he's been doing his rounds this week. He actually had a lot of comments about a lot of different things, but we'll start with Jon Jones here. And Jon Jones, according to Dana, will not be punished for the recent arrest for DWI and the gun charge. He did reach a deal with prosecutors in New Mexico, so he basically just had to serve house arrest, and that was it. So it was almost a slap on the wrist. Now the UFC's not even going to do anything about it. So, when this happened, obviously a lot of people were saying that Jon Jones should be stripped, that the UFC should cut him. I had a feeling that anything like this, that would never happen, just because right now, honestly, the UFC needs stars, and Jon Jones is one of them. This is a different situation than a few years ago where there was a few other, big stars still in the sport. Now it's just Jon Jones and Conor and a few other guys. But back, 4 or 5 years ago when he was stripped the first time, I think it was a little different environment. Right now, they need him on the roster. So even though he definitely screwed up, and you could have made the argument he should have been cut or stripped at least, they're not going to do anything, it looks like. So Jon Jones should be able to fight before the end of the year, according to Dana White. I'm assuming it's either Jan Blachowicz or Dominic Reyes. No one else really makes sense at the moment. Obviously, there's super fights out there with guys like Israel Adesanya and guys like that, but I don't think any of those fights will happen. It's going to be either Blachowicz or Reyes. I'm thinking it's going to be Blachowicz just because he hasn't had a shot yet and he's getting up there in age. UFC wants to give him a chance to fight for the belt, but could be Reyes for sure. And, if that happens, if Blachowicz gets it, then you could match up Reyes with Thiago Santos. That'd be what I'd like to see. Also, Anthony Johnson could possibly come back and he could make an impact in this division. So, light heavyweight's looking up for sure. Some people are going to be upset that Jon Jones isn't getting punished, but honestly, guys, are you surprised? I'm not surprised whatsoever. Dana also talked about Conor McGregor, and basically Dana said that Conor wants to come back ASAP. So Dana says that June is when Conor told me he wants to fight. Now Conor's management saying July they want to fight. So he wants to return the next few months. And I can't blame him because at this point he needs to take a fight because he wants to fight for the belt. We all know that. It's just if that's his goal, he's going to have to wait another year probably to fight for the belt. Because right now, tomorrow night, we got Gaethje and Ferguson. The winner of that fight gets the interim belt. They'll be fighting Khabib probably in the fall, but it could potentially be sooner because Khabib just said the other day that he could fight again in July. And it's funny because I talked about this like maybe last month on the podcast, and I said, maybe he could fight a little sooner than usual, even with the Ramadan thing. And some people were saying that that's not possible, but it looks like it could be. So July could possibly be Khabib's return. I doubt it's going to be against Conor. It's going to be against probably the winner of this fight, if I had to guess, obviously, because they are the interim champ. Although you never know with the UFC. You never know. But yeah, it should probably be the winner of Ferguson and Gaethje against Khabib in July or August, September, that in that time range. And if that happens, then the winner of that fight probably wouldn't fight until like the next year, probably in like January, February, March, something like that, April. So Conor could be waiting a long time to fight. So he's got to fight soon. Just looking at potential matchups, Jorge Masvidal seems to be the guy that makes the most sense, just because that is the biggest fight out there right now. That's a huge money fight for the UFC. Obviously, Masvidal and Kamaru Usman have been linked heavily to a UFC welterweight title fight. With the coronavirus pandemic, who knows when that's going to happen? Seems like Dana White's leaving the opportunity or the door open for the opportunity for Conor to step in and fight Masvidal instead in a super fight for the BMF belt. That could be what's on the line in that fight. So we'll see. I think that'd be a good fight, though. I would like to see McGregor and Masvidal. I said that as soon as the fight happened because if you guys remember, Masvidal was right inside the cage. He was right there, and I feel like it was a wasted opportunity, if anything, for the UFC. So McGregor could fight Masvidal. He could fight Nate Diaz for a third time. That's a fight that the UFC could always put on. Nate Diaz Trilogy fight's a big fight, I know Nate hasn't fought in a while, obviously, but that's a fight the UFC can do anytime. So, if Conor doesn't have an opponent, just say they do Usman against Masvidal, and Conor's sitting there without an opponent, you can just call up Nate Diaz and say, here, we'll offer you this much money. If Nate says yes, then you have a big trilogy fight. So, yeah, I definitely expect to see Conor in the next 2 months. It's in the UFC's best interest for him, too. Now, of course, Dana White did mention that he's going to lose $20 million for a live gate, for whenever Conor fights, because there's going to be no fans in attendance. But I think Dana realizes right now that there's unlikely fans in attendance probably for like 6 more months, maybe more, maybe, next January, possibly even more. Who knows? No one knows. So if you're the UFC right now, yes, you're going to lose a gate. You already know that, but it's still good to have Conor back and get that pay-per-view revenue. So I fully expect Conor to return in July or June or July, and definitely headlining a pay-per-view. And, if I had to guess, I would guess Masvidal, but again, Nate Diaz is out there, and who knows? I mean, maybe even like the winner or loser of Ferguson and Gaethje could potentially be in the mix for that fight as well. We really have no idea, but it is good to hear that Conor wants to fight again. And if that fight happens, it's going to happen on Fight Island, because I don't think he's going to be able to go to the U.S. at the moment, according to Dana White anyways. Fight Island's where Conor wants to fight. So we'll see what happens. As far as the Fight Island thing goes, still kind of a lot of question marks about that. Dana's saying late June now. At first it was like mid-March, May or something, and now it's late June. But hopefully it's real. And I was listening to an interview with Ariel Helwani he did here in Toronto on the Fan 590. And Ariel said that he honestly thinks that Fight Island could just be a promotional tactic and not even happen. So that definitely kind of sounded my alarms in my head when I heard that, because, really you can't always trust Dana. But I don't know, yeah, you could be pulling the meat as a leg here by saying, we have Fight Island, but you'd just be screwing the fighters over because they want to fight. And it just makes sense to have some sort of international fight venue. So I don't know, like, again, we haven't heard much about it, but I'd like to believe there is some semblance of a truth to the Fight Island rumors. Dana White talked about Stipe Miocic as well. He was asked what's going to go on with Stipe and the heavyweight title because he hasn't fought in a while. Stipe right now obviously is the UFC heavyweight champion, but he's also a first responder in Ohio, and that is right now his priority. So as much as Dana White wants Stipe to come back and return to the Octagon and defend his title, Stipe right now is fighting a bigger fight for his community. So you got to respect what Stipe is doing. And, I've seen a lot of people say that, the UFC should be promoting this about Stipe. And, in an ideal world, I'd like to agree. But again, it's a sporting event. So, and it's the UFC. So for them to make a almost like a scene about their heavyweight champ having to work a second job, it makes the UFC kind of look bad. Because if you look at other sports, like what other top ranked combat sports athlete, or not even combat sports athlete, just any athlete in North America, what other top athlete has a second job? There really isn't one, right? So aside from MMA fighters, and Stipe is one of the most prominent. He's probably the best, one of the best fighters right now, and he's one of the few champs that actually works a second job. So it's something the UFC's always kind of not wanted to promote. I remember years ago, I tried pitching some articles to the UFC magazine about. I had an article idea called the Working Fighter, and there was guys like Tim Boach was a guy that I used to talk to quite a bit, and I loved his story. He was working. I can't remember exactly what he was doing, but he had another job outside the UFC. And I pitched the story in the magazine. They were just no, this isn't what the UFC wants. They don't want to promote this stuff. So, they just want to ignore the fact that these guys are working second jobs. So, Stipe right now, yeah, he is a great guy and what he's doing is awesome. But, for the UFC, they just want him to get back in the octagon. They could probably care less about what he's doing in Ohio. So when Dana said he was potentially, thinking about stripping Stipe, I mean, he didn't say for sure he's going to do it. It definitely was a little surprising, but at the same time, they want to get the division rolling again. And Stipe hasn't fought since last August. DC wants to fight now, basically. We'll see what happens. I mean, the winner of Nagano and Rosenstruck's right up there for a title shot. They could possibly do an interim belt at some point. I really have no idea. It'd be nice to see Stipe return though soon. He's saying fall. DC wants it in the summer. Dana White probably wants it in the summer. So, maybe they can figure it out. But it has been interesting to see these kind of two go head to head on social media and in interviews lately because, Stipe is kind of a quiet guy, but, he released a statement and you could tell that he's a little bit upset. He said, I've never ducked anyone. And, it's crazy he actually had to even release a statement. The guy's a UFC heavyweight champ. He's not scared of people. He's just busy right now doing something that's really important for his community. And I respect what he's doing. But again, if you're the UFC, you want him in the cage. You want him fighting. Potential The Ultimate Fighter coachings pairings have been revealed. So Dana's saying Tough's coming back. He says there's talks for 2 different deals right now for a Tough return. Not many details otherwise, but you'd assume it's going to take place at the UFC Apex. You'd assume that it's going to be on ESPN Plus. And Dana's talking about some potential pairings. So he mentioned some big names. He said Habib Nurmagomedov versus the winner of Ferguson versus Gaethje. That's a potential pairing. Israel Adesanya against Paul Costa or Darren Till potentially could be pairings as well. And Kamaru Usman against Masvidal, he mentioned as a pairing, as well as Kamaru Usman against Colby Covington. That's a fight that could still happen, by the way. I mean, there's been talks recently about a rematch between Covington and Usman. UFC liked that fight. It was a great fight. So there's been talks about that. That could happen too. I'm not really sure. I mean, any of these really do make sense. I hope it's not Habib and Tony or whoever. I just want to see those guys fight. If Tony wins tomorrow, the betting odds expect him to, I just want to see him fight Habib next. I don't want to see them do Tough and then fight. That's going to be even more of an opportunity for someone to get hurt and the fight not to happen again. So, I wouldn't mind if they're going to bring it back. And, I'm not a huge fan of Tough these days just because I think Contender Series is better right now. But I think Tough had its time in place, and I think it was great. But I think Contender Series right now makes more sense. If they do the Tough coaching pairings, though, I wouldn't mind Adesanya against Costa or Till. I think those both would be pretty good. I think there'd be a lot of trash talk, and they'd make for pretty good TV. So I think that'd be okay. I just hope it's not Habib because I really don't think that he needs to be sitting on the sidelines any longer. Some fight announcements this week. So there has been some fight announcements. There's been a lot the last few weeks, but they've been a lot of rebookings from cards that have been canceled in March, April, and May. So there's some new fights though here. We'll start with the big one here, May 23rd. So Dana White says this card's going to take place in Las Vegas. We have no idea, but apparently they're meeting, like the Las Vegas and Nevada, like executives are meeting this weekend to discuss when the city's going to somewhat reopen, I guess. Obviously, this event's going to take place at the Apex with no fans, but the rumored fight right now is Tyron Woodley versus Gilbert Burns. And actually, Combachi, great source down there in Brazil, has confirmed this fight will take place as the main event. So I really like this fight. It's a fun fight. You know, a lot of people want to see Woodley versus Covington. That would be great too. But I think Woodley Burns makes a lot of sense right now. Woodley obviously was supposed to fight Leon Edwards. Edwards is stuck in England. He cannot come to the United States to fight right now due to travel restrictions. So he wasn't able to fight in this card, even though it would have been best to rebook that fight because I think it made sense. But, you know, Burns is a guy that's always willing to step in there and fight. He actually just fought in the last card when he knocked out Damian Maia back in March. So he's red hot right now, 5 straight wins. Woodley coming off the loss to Usman, but still an elite guy. I mean, he's still one of the top 3 guys in that division. So great fight, makes a lot of sense. You know, who do I favor in that fight? I think Woodley will probably be the betting favorite if I had to guess, just based on his body of work and the fact that he's a former champ in the welterweight division. But, you know, Gilbert Burns is a beast, guys, and he's looked amazing lately. So, you know, Gilbert's definitely a guy that will be a live underdog in that fight. But if I had to guess, I would assume Woodley will be slightly favored, if anything. But, you know, as far as it taking place in Vegas, who knows? Dana White says that's what he wants, but, you know, there could be a backup plan for Jacksonville once again if that doesn't happen. The other card that is supposed to happen is on June 6th, and basically this card was supposed to take place in Perth, Australia. That fight was canceled. That card was canceled, UFC 251. That event will not go on. They'll have to rebook the pay-per-view card for another time. This possibly could be a pay-per-view on June 6th as well, maybe at the Apex, maybe somewhere else. But there have been some fights trickling out for this card, including a light heavyweight bout between Alonzo Menifield and Devin Clark. And our own Cole Sheldon at BJ Penn broke that. So a really good fight here. Alonzo Menifield, great prospect at 205. Clark is kind of a journeyman at this point and definitely not a very durable guy, but you know, still a pretty good fight here. And I would assume Menifield will be pretty heavily favored, I would say, in this fight. And this guy, to me, is a monster, and I think he could be a potential champ one day. So I would like him in this fight. And the other fight that was announced is a flyweight bout between Jussier Formiga and Alex Perez. Really fun fight as well. Formiga, one of the top flyweights in the world for years, and Perez has been one of the top guys the last few years. So a really fun fight. And of course, the main event of that card right now is rumored to be Amanda Nunes versus Felicia Spencer, although that could be the co-main event, and they could add another big fight as the main event. Maybe Conor, I don't know. June 16th is kind of soon for Conor to fight, but maybe they can figure out someone to fight in the main event for that. It won't be Alexander Volkanovski, though. Obviously, I don't think he'll be flying to the United States anytime soon, so the Holloway fight, I don't think it's going to happen. The rematch that was supposed to take place on that same date, and as well, Shevchenko and Joanne Calderwood won't be taking place. I think Shevchenko got hurt, and that fight was canceled anyways. But it was supposed to take place on June 6th. It won't be taking place this time around. So, yeah, could be in Vegas. We really have no idea. But you know, if you're a fan of these cities that have events coming up, like if you're a fan and you're in, for instance, San Diego, that was supposed to be next week. That sucks for you because UFC hasn't been in San Diego in a while, and it'll probably be a couple more years now if I had to guess to bring it back. Like they had their schedule and they could potentially push everything back a few months. Like, but it's so hard to book with booking venues and stuff like that that a lot of these events and the fans in these cities are going to be screwed because they won't be able to see their UFC cards live in person anytime soon. Just because other cities are waiting too. You know, there was, for instance, an event in Saskatoon, I think on the 13th or the 20th, and I don't think that's going to happen either. So those fans in Saskatoon probably got screwed out of their event. But again, it's not the UFC's fault. Just this coronavirus pandemic. It's pretty crazy. So anyways, that's going to be it for today's show, guys. Once again, appreciate you guys tuning in. And let's just plug some stuff here. Okay, so Tuesday, UFC 249 podcast, picks and predictions for all that with Cole. Go back and check that out. On the website, I got my written previews for the main event between Ferguson and Gaethje and the co-main event between Cruz and Cejudo, so definitely check that out. Let's see here. BJPen.com, lots of news there. MMARings.net, I have 2 articles there right now about UFC 249. One about just what the UFC has been doing to kind of keep the safety issues in mind and what the risk versus rewards is for holding an event. And the other one will be a kind of almost like a teaser of the main event and the co-main event. So that's going to be it for today's podcast. For next week, I'll be doing 3 podcasts, which is sweet. So I've been doing 2 the last few weeks, but next week's going to be 3 just because we have 2 cards to talk about. We have one on Wednesday and one on Saturday. So I'll be back for 3 shows next week. I'm going to be back Monday to recap UFC 249. Tuesday, I'll be previewing the card for Wednesday. And then I think for the Saturday card, I'll probably jump on Thursday, potentially Friday to preview that card. But I'm looking at Thursday instead and not doing a Friday show. I'll let you guys know. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Have a great weekend. Enjoy UFC 249, guys. Let's hope it goes off without a hitch. And one last comment here. Kevin D says he likes a lot of dogs at UFC 249. Kevin, I hope you heard Tuesday's podcast. I did pick 3 dogs. Cole picked 3 dogs. Go back and check it out. And here were dogs I liked. Have a great weekend, guys. See you Monday. Bye.